episode today. I'm Karla, and this is...
I'm Pyper. Hi.
And let's start to be posh with us.
Yes, exactly.
So today, actually, we are going to talk about interesting topic, which Pyper is going to introduce to us.
Yes.
And you can actually start and educate us.
Okay, so today I want to talk about the sexual revolution. This topic kind of was inspired, well, not even just inspired, wholly influenced by Louise Perry's book, The Case Against the Sexual Revolution. And I have kind of a little disclaimer beforehand. I just basically want to say that I'm not a prude or a super conservative moralist or anything, and of course I believe in sexual freedom and autonomy for all women, but the main reason this topic is so interesting to me and so personal, I guess, and I'm sure you would agree, is because I think it's important that we acknowledge the negative consequences of the sexual revolution as well as the positive ones, and particularly...
I'm super excited.
Yeah.
Super excited.
I'm also excited, and I'm so excited, this is a tangent, but I'm so excited about this topic, and I did so much preparation for it because I don't want to butcher it, that I feel like this is gonna be the most, the least casual episode ever. I'm gonna be checking my notes and being like, well, actually, every 2 seconds. And I will put them so I can see them better because I don't want to look weird. But I just think we have to acknowledge the negative consequences of sexual revolution, particularly the fact that it doesn't account for gender differences, because frankly, and you'll hear a little more about this, but it was spearheaded by men and also by women that, in terms of personality tests and personality metrics, they kind of act more like men, or they are more like men. I'll get onto it later, as well as it was obviously informed by the historical social context at the time. The sexual revolution, which I will explain, took place in the 60s predominantly. And I mean, you can think of how things were in the 60s. It was a huge shift, women entering the workplace, so many things that I'll get into. But basically, the movement doesn't truly account for gender differences. It inherently serves men as opposed to the average woman. And this feminist narrative largely overlooks and champions those things that just benefit men. And I mean, of course, why not? That's at the core of a lot of, the way the sexual revolution occurred, that's at the core of a lot of feminist ideology. But I do want to say that I'm incredibly grateful and appreciative of so many of the advances that we've made in society. I'm happy that I have access to birth control. I'm in control of my reproductive health. I can work, I can study, all of these things. They're absolutely amazing.
There was a big progress since that time.
Exactly.
Clearly we can see that, but there are still some issues until these days.
Exactly. I'm so happy for all of the positive things that happened, but I do think there are a lot of negative after effects, let's say.
Yeah, for sure.
Just because of how the movement came about. But basically, I just think this kind of narrative of sexual freedom needs an overhaul. I don't have the solution, but I kind of do want to talk about the problem a little bit today. So mainly, I just, to quickly touch upon what the sexual revolution is, do you know anything about it? What does it conjure up in your mind when you think of it?
I don't know, that women became more stronger, let's say, that they were more talked about, that they, exactly like you said, they started to work, they started to have a bigger voice, and that's what it comes to my mind. But you are here today to also educate me. So that's basically what comes to my mind when I hear such a thing. So I don't know if I'm right or wrong.
Well, mostly a lot of what you explained was part of the growing women's movement at the time. Obviously coming out of the war, the Great Depression, mostly in the US, but of course also worldwide. Women started to, as you say, find their voice more, find their place in the world, from a modern perspective, going to work, not necessarily staying at home and looking after children. And that, combined with the invention of birth control in the 60s, gave women more sexual freedom. It meant that there was no longer the argument that women couldn't be in the workplace or shouldn't hold high positions because they would need to stay home and look after the children, or they would need to be pregnant. All of these advances that we had in terms of reproductive health, that just continued, of course, with freezing eggs, IVF, all of these things, the progression. It just meant that women could kind of, I'm hesitant to say this, but act more like men.
Yeah.
And obviously the majority of the women that really were championing this and were really proud of it are women that, as I said earlier, act more like men.
Yeah, maybe like be more, let's say, be more equal as a man, no? Or
Yeah.
is it the right way to say act like a man?
Yeah, I don't really mean act like a man, but well, I do, but I don't mean that in a negative way. Obviously, I'll touch more on this in literally just a second. But men and women, our personalities follow different trends. So,
True.
of course, every individual is completely different. And maybe we could even talk about personality tests in a later episode, take them ourselves. But men and women,
Bitch.
men and women just score differently. My favorite, the most common, most used personality test. Obviously, every test has its flaws. Is it's called the Big Five. It scores 5 scales. You've probably heard of it. Also called, I think, Ocean, because that's what the things stand for. But I'm actually going to talk about how men and women differ on that, because it's kind of the easiest metric to look at, the most comprehensive one. But essentially, let me get a little back on track, because I forgot what I was going to say a little bit. Actually, yeah, that's it. Just the sexual revolution was just this period of great change and this sexual liberation for women, kind of. So speaking a little about gender differences, I actually want to ask you another question. I want to say, from your kind of life experience, what do you think the biggest differences between men and women are? It's a tough one, right? And it feels like a loaded question.
Well, obviously there are, what do you mean about differences? Like, there are differences in so many ways. It's personalities, it's how women are in general. Like, they're more soft, sensitive, they have more of understanding to things. Let's say, like, men sometimes are simple creatures, no offense, but they are. And then, of course, like, if I think about a man, what comes to my mind is somebody strong, independent, taking care, like, of family, like when a risk comes or something. Not like as a mother taking care of family, but like more like being there, being the support, you know? Like, I'm not saying that a man shouldn't help a woman with children, but you know what I mean. And exactly, when it comes to girls or women, the first thing what comes to my mind is like mom, you know, like being a mother. I don't know if that's right, but I mean, I think it's natural, and like being more like soft.
I mean, that's actually a nice way to put it, a more, let's say, plain English way of saying it, because the traits that you tend to think of with motherhood, like you say, it's soft, nurturing, empathetic, compassionate, a bunch of nice things.
There's so many things I think you can say that, you know, like, I cannot have a clear answer to this. There's a man, and he has his own, like, things and benefits, and he can do some things, I think, better than a woman.
Of course.
And then there are women that they can do better than a man. Exactly. You know, we are, like, two different types of, like, can I say people? Well, gender. Like, it's two different things.
We are different. And like you say, there are benefits and disadvantages to both.
But it doesn't mean that one has to be discriminated because of the other.
Yeah, of course not. There is no superiority or inferiority. It's literally, we're just different.
Exactly.
Which I think the feminist narrative that kind of came out of these times kind of erased. Which this is jumping all over the place, because this topic is so expansive and so connected that it's hard to separate into segments. But I will explain the gender differences and then the kind of historical context that's involved. But basically, going to the Big Five, I'm going to pull my paper here and hope nobody can see it because it's kind of ugly. Women, the scale, the Big Five scale, you can break it down into, what are they called? Subscales. I don't remember the the actual term.
Mm-hmm.
But there are 5 major factors. It's openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So I will explain them. Don't worry. But basically, openness, which is it's this curiosity, open-mindedness. You're more likely to be friendly, empathetic. These things. Women score much higher than men
Yes,
on
that's
that
what
trait.
I wanted to say.
Yeah,
That
across the
actually,
board.
if you would say like this term, I would say it's woman.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, actually, let's do it like that. I
Yeah,
will
okay.
explain,
And
then
I
I want
guess.
you. And yeah, I want you to guess. That's a fun, interactive way. So, conscientiousness. This is where you're more particular, specific, organized, responsible. You think about things a lot more.
Now my ego will come in a way.
Yeah, it's also not clear cut. And
Okay,
as I said,
okay,
everybody
continue,
is
sorry.
different. Individuals are different. But that's
Okay.
basically it. That's what conscientiousness is. It's being particular. It's being organized, liking things a certain way.
I don't think men are that organized. I think it depends who.
Mm-hmm.
It depends which type. For example, our boyfriends, I think they're organized in a good way.
I don't know about
Well,
that.
well in some ways.
Most ways,
in
yeah.
most ways, yes. We are lucky. Good job, good job.
We probably the microphone died when we high-fived.
Yeah, woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is the girl for me, yeah.
That's
for
a
sure.
girly trait.
Yeah.
That's basically the same as ordering a white wine spritzer. Like so then the next trait is extroversion. So this is about being outgoing, assertive. You're not afraid to just present yourself as you are.
I think both.
Both, of course. This is actually, I think,
Maybe more men.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe more men in this one.
Yeah.
But again, like the generation is going so fast.
Yeah.
That now it's so hard to say if it's a man or a woman, you know?
Exactly.
But in past
Yeah.
days, like I would say man.
Exactly. That's also another thing is, I'm not saying that people don't evolve and
Tears.
change.
I'm so proud.
That people don't evolve and change, and obviously the social climate affects how people. That's actually a huge point. These aren't 100% innate.
Yeah.
Like, of course, you're influenced by your social surroundings. So as you say, in a more traditional society, that is more of a masculine trait. But obviously, in the modern world, we have the element that, as this whole podcast episode will be about, acting like a man kind of was praised, prioritized. It meant you were more likely to be successful. So those masculine traits kind of came to the forefront for everybody. Everybody wants to be more assertive. I mean, think about in the workplace. You know, most women. This is not 100% the case, but a lot of the reasons for the gender pay gap are actually that women are afraid to ask for raises. Women
Yeah.
are afraid to ask for what they need in the position.
Actually, I would like to add to this, like women in work. I don't know if you are going to talk about it or not here. But I was with my parents in a restaurant a few days ago, and it was my stepdad, mom, and her best friend. And I kind of put on the table that we are having a podcast and what we are talking about. They were super interested, right? And I don't know how did we start this topic, but we started to talk how men treat women in work badly.
Yeah.
That, for example, she has an idea, she put up some meeting, and there's this man, and she is there also, so both of them are there who leads the meeting. She starts to talk. She said there was a room full of men. Nobody cares what she's saying. You know, like nobody listens.
Yeah, it's true.
And then there's this man, even though he would like talk bunch of, I don't want to be now cursing, but a bunch of things what are not meaningless, let's say, or can be.
I think
Everybody
you're looking
is
for the word bullshit. Like
yeah. Let's say okay. And everybody suddenly cares.
Yeah.
Everybody is focused, everybody has respect, and which also I think maybe leads women not to speak up
Yeah.
that much because she knows she is already not hurt in basic things.
Yeah. It's almost like cyclical, because I think a lot of the reason why women aren't heard or aren't appreciated in these contexts, both individually but also just societally, is because women tend to speak up less in the first place, or the language they use is different. Because men tend to be more assertive, a woman is more likely to phrase things as a question.
Yeah.
What do you think of this idea? How do you think this would help in the next few weeks, whatever,
Exactly.
Whereas a man will say, I think this is a great plan. I think this is going to do this in the next few weeks. And that language really informs how people see us and respond to us. But then, of course, as you say, women are more likely to speak like that. So some men, without, even if a woman isn't acting that way, maybe they will kind of immediately see them differently.
Yeah.
And then it discourages the woman from speaking up.
That's true. And I have actually another example. I just had a interview with one guy like 2 months ago. It wasn't really an interview, but they wanted to get to know me, okay? But he was the boss of the how you call it? Not
NGO.
Yeah, like, well, he was the boss of the, let's say, Middle East in this company.
Okay.
And I was talking with him, and suddenly, like, he knew he was talking with a girl. He went online on a computer. This dude, he was like almost like on a bed, headphones on, no light.
Oh yeah.
I was like, why do I even want
what
to,
are we,
like,
texting? Like
no, but there was his assistant beside, like, on another window, but it already seemed like
dismissive.
Like, very I would I wonder if he would be like this if a man would sit in front of him. And then I was kind of, like, I'm a lot open-minded. I'm not shit. Great, so we are back again. Technical issues again, doesn't matter. What I was saying, to continue, so I had an interview. It wasn't really professional. It was like half interview, half not, like, to get to know me. And this man, basically, I feel like he didn't really show any respect. And my point was, if there would be a guy, if he would show respect.
Yeah.
If it would be different, For sure, if there would be a man who is, like, let's say 30 years old and comes for his position, don't tell me he will lay in his bed with headphones and no light on.
100%.
And then what actually got me was he told me, like, few of things, and he said, well, it's interesting. I never really saw a woman like you who, like, believes in herself. And I feel like you can, like, speak for yourself, and you are you're not afraid, So, and then he said, like, a sentence, I don't know how to phrase it in English, but he was like, well, just because I was in Scotland, he was like, well, when you get back to Prague, just text us an email and send us an email, and I'm not afraid about you because, like, you know how to speak.
Yeah.
In this type of way.
You mean as if you think you would be skeptical of...
and the same thing I can say about him.
Yeah.
But why would I say it?
Yeah.
Why would I even say
True.
that, oh, great, you are able to speak. Wow, congratulations,
Yeah.
And he made it really clear that he thinks about me like a strong person, which, of course, like, it's nice to hear.
Yes, of course.
But why would he have to say it?
Yeah.
Like, it's a surprise for him.
I think that's another problem with a lot of these traits, is that because women and men tend to appear, I mean, obviously not everybody breaks down the way they view people into personality traits, but I think because men and women kind of are so obviously different, when a woman has, let's say, as an individual, something that maybe appears more masculine, or I don't even like putting it in that kind of binary term, but it's just, leaning towards the average.
More stronger.
Like, more assertive, more extroverted.
Exactly.
Then it is alarming to some men, especially, not alarming, just shocking, because...
Let's say maybe when she's independent.
Yeah, I think, okay, I feel like I figured a way to articulate it. I feel like because of what the averages are, depending on where you fall, maybe ideologically, politically, whatever, if you're a super liberal person, you're more likely to perceive women as being I'm going to put it in the masculine feminine binary just because it's kind of easier.
Yep.
More towards the masculine side of, on average, you're more likely to say, okay, well, women are this much assertive, women are, you know, this open, this extroverted, whatever. Whereas if you're on the more conservative side, you kind of are probably more likely to skew the average in the feminine direction and say women are very meek, women aren't very outspoken. And I think that's the problem here, is that our erasure of gender differences, the fact that we don't like to publicly acknowledge it, the fact that we don't take them at face value for what they are, whatever, means that people, of course, naturally form their own perspectives, their own ideas, and then you get things like this where there are men that don't expect a woman to possess certain traits, or women that don't expect men to possess certain traits, for example, like high emotionality and stuff. So, yeah.
Well, it felt like he would tell me, you know, like, even, oh, you look sensitive.
Yeah, true. Or like,
what I should do with that
Exactly.
information. Like, I'm fighting for my place in this job.
That also kind of shows that the fact, because as you say, you wouldn't, even though I take pride in being a sensitive person, I'm super emotional. I take pride in it because I think it's informed a lot of how I see the world, the way I deal with people. I think it's made me more compassionate, more empathetic, more patient. But because we have this, let's say, a worldview that prioritizes masculinity and puts masculinity on a pedestal, thanks to the erasure of gender differences, thanks to the this entire historical context that I provided, it means that if it's as you say, a compliment to call a woman strong, a compliment to say, wow, you're so assertive, whatever.
Yeah.
But to say, wow, you're so sensitive, to a man or a woman, it's an insult. If I looked at you and said, Karla, you're so sensitive,
Exactly, that's true.
you would be like, hello? No, I'm not. Like,
but I am.
yeah. Both of us just big crybabies. But yeah, so.
But that's true. I'm not ashamed of it that I'm sensitive.
No.
Like, even when I get it, well, I don't want to really go in a different direction, but even like when I cry or I have emotions and stuff, I do have emotions. Like, people tell me exactly, you're too sensitive, and what I am.
Yeah. Okay.
And what? Like,
you're too open.
Exactly. Like, I cry. Like, just like shut up.
It's like a trait. Yeah.
And you have no emotions whatsoever. Like, what is better?
That's the thing. We all score differently on these traits. We're all individuals, you know, and maybe women tend to be more of a certain way, men tend to be more the other, but none of these traits are a negative or positive thing, depending on the context they're in. Of course, it's not helpful if you're, I don't know, super shy and you're supposed to be a public speaker, but like, you know, like, you're never gonna be a good charismatic orator if you're super introverted, or you score low on extroversion rather, because they're not opposites. But anyways, amazing. Basically, I think the next thing I want to say, so far you're 3 for 3 on the traits, on openness, conscientiousness, and extroversion. Who do you think? One? There are 2 more.
Okay.
Who do you think is more agreeable? I like it too. So agreeableness tends to mean that you are more compassionate, cooperative. You're unlikely to oppose somebody. If you're incredibly high on agreeableness, you could be considered kind of a pushover. I could say, this blanket is green, and you would be like, yeah, I suppose it's a certain shade of green, even though it's very clearly yellow, you know?
Well, now there is my personality.
Yeah, that's true.
And, well, actually, this is hard, because like I said, men are simple creatures sometimes. And when I think about my stepdad, and when we are choosing, well, actually, no. Maybe girls.
Yeah.
I would say girls, because they act simple, but then they're like, oh no, that's bad, like, we have to do it this way and this way. Actually, girls.
You think girls are more agreeable?
Well, me, no.
No. No, that's true. I definitely, and you are right, women score higher on agreeableness than men, which is so important with some of the stuff we speak about later. Finally, neuroticism. Neuroticism is that you are more likely to experience negative emotion or emotional ups and downs.
Man.
Men, interesting.
That they again, sorry,
You're more likely to experience negative emotions, let me put it in a better context, such as anxiety, paranoia, depression. It's not, the way I like to think of neuroticism, and this is absolutely not very psychologically correct, but it's more like being frazzled to me. That you're overthinking.
Girls.
You know,
if you say like overthinking, girls, I took it in a different.
And also,
way.
interestingly, people that are that score higher on neuroticism, they tend to crave emotional support. I mean, depending on their other traits, of course, but they're more likely to look for external support because internally they aren't very able to do it, to find that. Obviously women score higher on that trait on average. Again, individual
I agree
differences.
now. I took it from different.
And these aren't these personality traits, but two other things that are important for this discussion are mating strategies. That sounds so animalistic, but like basically a short-term mating strategy is that you prefer quick, casual, short-term sexual encounters, low commitment, a lot of partners.
I was like, where does this come from? Or where is it going?
And that's obviously more of a male trait. Again, individual differences. I don't want to have to keep saying this, but I'm not being some hyper-conservative moralist, but like that's more of a male thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's actually what the sexual revolution kind of ended up promoting, is this short-term mating strategy, which is great for men because they are more inclined to it, they prefer it, but women tend to favor a long-term mating strategy, which is essentially that you look for commitment, you want an enduring connection, you actually kind of want a slow burn, you don't want
safety.
Exactly, safety, security.
Safe place around you, feel like home.
And that is because, I mean, from an evolutionary perspective, every single organism in every species wants to reproduce, and women have there are more stakes for women when it comes to reproduction, not just in the fact that you are carrying a pregnancy, the strain on your body and all of this stuff, but actually also just the fact that once you give birth, you from the moment that you are pregnant, even for the most part, but certainly from when the baby is born, you have a connection with it, and you have to be there for human babies are essentially, you speak of this thing called the fourth trimester, which is essentially the fact that pregnancy actually only has 3 trimesters, but human babies are born prematurely, let's say. So we come out of the womb useless. Like literally we are useless. Baby giraffes get up and walk within a day, I think. We come out and we need to be fed. We can't we can't even lift our heads when we're born.
True.
So there has to be somebody there, and because of the connection, because of the fact the mother literally feeds you, it's the mother. So what women are seeking in partnership is someone who tends to recognize the risk, the stakes that are on the women for that, and will also stick around. They're looking for somebody who is happy to enter a biparental relationship. They're happy to have children and both stick around, both be there. Which is, of course, in many traditional aspects, it's prioritized, but the short-term mating strategy, this find someone, have sex with them, leave, essentially. Casual dates, whatever, you're trying to get straight to the point, that is what is prioritized or focused on or whatever in the modern world. So those are kind of the differences that I think are important context for the conversation. And I cannot believe I've spoken about this for this long already. But now part 2, if you can believe it, it's the history. And mainly I think it's important to talk about, we gave the historical context of the workplace and the women's movement and stuff. I think I want to talk a lot about the history of birth control and how that affected relationships. As I said before, it was invented or kind of created in the 60s. I won't go on too long of a tangent about this, but there is it's so ethically questionable, the
I
testing
think
process.
also like about birth control, we will have a separate episode,
Yeah,
which there is so much
of
to
course.
say about
Oh,
it.
of course.
Yes.
Not just individually and how it affects us now, but historically, essentially, I think in the early testing phases of the oral contraceptive pill, the pills were administered to, I think it was Puerto Rican women, lower class Puerto Rican women. They essentially were just like, okay, here you go, take this. We don't know what it will do to you. Doses were too high. They were trying to figure it out. It was essentially mass sterilization.
Well,
I don't know whether
plenty
deliberately or
people
not.
died, no, because of it.
Yeah,
Didn't?
I don't know.
I don't know
100%.
if I heard about it, but I think there was something like that. Well, obviously, when you're trying a new pill, you know, and at these times, they didn't have technology like we have, you know, or I don't know if it helps or not, but I feel like it was a big of a risk.
Exactly. And I mean, they took that risk on people that they perceived as a lesser class. So
because why would they even try it on a lower class?
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. It's so that is a whole, as you say, whole other episode. I could even go on a tangent about that. I won't. It was also invented by a man, which, not to be all like a hyper feminist crusade or whatever, but it is interesting. Okay, historical context. I don't know how many female pioneering scientists there were at the time, but it is just kind of funny that it's something that women take that has affected women's lives so significantly.
It's funny now that they didn't think about something for themselves, how to prevent this, but let's give a pill to a woman.
Well, yeah, exactly. Immediately. I mean, they were starting from scratch. There was absolutely no reason why they... And again, this is probably more for the birth control episode, but there is much, much, much more funding into research about... Okay, men's biological systems, more research on that, and more funding, but there is much more funding on reproductive health for women than for men. This is why it's not impossible for there to be a male birth control. It's just under-researched, underfunded. Anyway.
But now there is just another episode. Birth control, we will talk about it forever.
Initially, when the birth control pill was finally successfully created, it was only provided to married women who already had children. It was essentially family planning. You already had kids, you were already in a committed relationship, you didn't want any more, here's this pill, you can take it, or you can even space your kids apart, all of these things. It wasn't offered to single women, but eventually it became available to all, and of course it was favored by women who had a desire to be in the workplace and achieve the level of success that traditionally was reserved for a man. You know, and these women, coincidentally, scored higher on the, you know, they tended to display more male traits in the personality test that we described before. Not that they were all surveyed, but kind of looking back, we can assume that was the case. So we can see that there was kind of this prioritization of a male outlook, of a male lifestyle, put off having children, you know, focus on your career, don't focus on family, don't focus on relationships as much. Not 100%, but that's where it was heading. And this was the only way at the time to be successful. And since there was little regard for gender differences, it essentially meant that if we had maybe at the time considered that men and women were different, instead of, I mean, there was a little bit of women were viewed as inferior. Traditionally, female traits were not seen as beneficial for the workplace at all. Maybe if we had looked at this and said, okay, how can we ensure that women with their female traits forward would be successful in the workplace? We would maybe have more of a focus on how compassion is useful in a working environment, or how openness is, you know, it's curiosity, imaginativeness, all of these things. Anyway, that just wasn't the case. That's not how things played out. So you were expected to think, act, look like a man, whatever. And also this women's liberation movement and everything, and sexual freedom was on the rise, and sexual expression too. This also was a time of the LGBT, well, I don't even know if it was LGBT, LG movement. I don't know how many letters there were in the 60s, but that was also That was also
Definitely not the full alphabet, yeah, sure.
that was you know, up and coming. We were beginning to champion gay rights a lot more. Amazing, whatever. And the advent of birth control meant risk-free sex, and this only increased the liberal attitude. This just meant amazing. All of these masculine traits that I'm putting forward, I also can finally control reproduction. And of course, there is desire. Humans do want to have sex outside of marriage, whatever. So yeah, naturally one went towards it, and being in that male environment, you could assume that it definitely influenced their attitudes towards sex too, and the general public's attitude towards sex. And men and women could have sex without this fear of forced commitment. Like in the past, which, you know, is pregnancy, the forced commitment is pregnancy. In the past, if a woman got pregnant, if you had premarital sex and a woman got pregnant, you were expected to marry her.
Yes.
But I actually have to flip to my other part that I was looking at here because it fits much better here. Pregnancy and parenthood became more of a woman's responsibility because of birth control. It essentially meant that since, I mean, marriage was no longer a prerequisite for sex, so when birth control failed, or a woman just wasn't using it, but was still having this sex that was kind of pushed, sexual attitude was pushing a certain type of sexual relationship, casual, it just meant that the woman a lot of the time was single, or they weren't in a committed relationship, or even if they were in a relationship, there was no hard commitment like marriage, like whatever. So the woman kind of was solely responsible for that choice. And it didn't help that attitudes towards abortion were also slowly shifting, especially on the liberal side, where essentially it was like, well, if she doesn't want to be a single parent, she can just get rid of it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, abortions are also a chapter by itself, which
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Exactly.
How even we live now in this day and what is happening in the world.
Yeah.
But also another episode.
But essentially, it just alleviated men of the expectation and the responsibility, and it led to more to higher rates of single motherhood, which I wanted to add some numbers in here. It's risen in the last 50 years by almost 3 times as much.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so now there are 24 million single mothers in the US alone.
Yeah, so only in US.
Only in the US. These statistics are just for the US because it was just easy to find. And divorce also doubled because I didn't really look into too much how this linked, but I also think this sexual liberation, kind of this freedom in relationships, it has disrupted the sanctity of marriage a little.
But also this leads to the first episode what we had. I think it's also very connected why people are not together this long. So
exactly.
If you're interested, guys, you can
go check it out.
Check our episode before.
Essentially, it also meant this lack of forced commitment and the way men and women were having sex with each other. Perhaps the assertiveness of men is the reason this came into play, or the fact that men were already, let's say, more important in society at the time, and we lent more into what they were doing. I feel like I'm repeating myself so much.
No, it's fine. I think it's a really interesting topic, and we are saying a lot of stuff.
But it influenced society so much. Men score a lot higher on sociosexuality, which is essentially this kind of short-term mating strategy that you prefer casual relationships, a lot of partners, whatever. It's men score much higher. And also, this is interesting, more fetishes, essentially. Men are much more likely to have particular sexual fetishes than women are. Yeah. And women also, because of, I guess, the climate, we play into it a lot more, which is so, this again, I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but it's so interesting because you see young women leaning into things that, of course, as an individual, you might enjoy it, but across the board, women are just less likely to enjoy rough sex, for example. Okay, maybe it's fun from time to time, but, like, it's not like women aren't necessarily craving that, let's say. Because
I don't want to be here now.
Because because of the fact that women tend to be more, as you said before, softer, sensitive, you know.
Yeah.
But you would kind of, whatever. It's just interesting. But anyway, because of men scoring higher on sociosexuality and the fact that they suddenly had more access to a lot of women, because so many women were beginning to take birth control, so many women were beginning to put themselves out there sexually, which again, great for them at the time, amazing for them at the time, for the women that were doing this. But as we spoke about in the other episode, this kind of minority that did prefer this way of sexual relationships, they might not necessarily represent the personality, the preferences of the average woman.
Yes, I agree.
But, you know, all it took was a minority. All it took was 1/3 of the women acting this way, preferring this kind of sexual relationship, for men to suddenly put not necessarily higher value in them, but it provided what they wanted very easily. Risk-free casual sex. And then that became the norm. That became what men expected, what men wanted, what you kind of even need to do as a woman in certain ways to even enter into a relationship.
So actually, it's funny. When they invented the pill, you know, I'm thinking, did they invented it for themselves or for women?
I kind of think maybe for. I mean, you could argue that, of course, they only gave it to married women at first, but I feel like it was almost a selfish creation. But imagine like
2 men sitting with each other at that time, you know.
Yeah.
And they were like, wow, it would be amazing, you know, just
to
have sexual intercourse with someone and not get them pregnant, you know?
And they're like,
actually, I would love to see this conversation of men sitting and inventing this pill. And their first thought, why they invented this pill,
one of them is just sitting there like, wow, I would really like to get it on with my receptionist, but I don't want her to get pregnant. Like,
my wife,
I don't want my wife to find out. Like, I mean, maybe, but yeah. It also meant that women's natural sexual tendencies were kind of viewed negatively, like this idea that a woman is clingy if she wants you to call her after, you know, she wants you to take her out to dinner. She gives it up, she has sex with you, whatever, and then she wants you to stick around. And then you kind of get this thing, it still persists today, of men being like, oh god, like she keeps calling me, you know? Like, anyway.
So I think that was our topic for today.
Wait,
is there something more that
there is a little
we want to talk about?
There is a little more.
Okay, let's
go. If you don't mind.
I don't mind.
I'm gonna
sit here until tomorrow.
Because I just realized, like, this is maybe one of my favorite parts.
Also,
I know we've been rambling for so long.
Maybe you can check if there's something in the chat or not.
Yes.
Or is that only Tom saying
No, good idea.
Naughty stuff.
He's like, what do you mean? I was gonna say something, I don't want to say it. I don't want, what if... Oh, it's not connecting.
Anyway, doesn't matter. Let's continue.
We can check on your phone after. Anyway, okay, so the social climate that was created by the sexual revolution.
Oh yeah, social climate. Yeah, I totally forgot we have this. Thank you.
That I outlined, combined with the average personality of most women, means, you know, this high agreeableness, this lack of assertiveness. It kind of means that women are more likely to go along with the sexual script that is asserted by the man. And they're more likely to engage in sexual relationships that don't meet their desires or expectations. And they're more likely to regret a sexual encounter after the fact. You know, have you ever had a friend, you know, come home and be like... I mean, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus here.
No, I'm
You're choking. Karla is just experiencing her own personal difficulties right now. Anyway, I think...
What do people do when they just
I know, right?
Or something like we are allowed?
Am I expected to edit this out? I'm gonna have to cut my sentence in half. Shall I start again?
Yes, please. Sorry, I really am out of breath.
Anyway, it basically... Okay, I'll just do the whole
Just start again, please.
the social climate created by the sexual revolution, you know, everything that I just outlined, combined with the average personality of most women, this high agreeableness, low assertiveness, all of these things, means women are more likely to go along with the sexual script asserted by a man. It also means that they're more likely to engage in sexual relationships that don't meet their desires or their expectations. And they're more likely to regret a sexual encounter after the fact. So they're likely to wake up the next morning and think, wow, I wish I hadn't have done that. A man is not really likely to think that at all. Like, he probably barely even thinks about it afterwards.
It's like, check, next.
Yeah, exactly. So that kind of brings me to a question that I wanted to ask you is, what do you think of consent? Do you think consent is enough? Or first of all, what does consent even mean to you? You know,
please explain to me consent. What does
consent.
it
Consent is wow. It's a really hard word to define without using the word itself.
mean? Can we use in this podcast easy vocabulary sometimes?
Consent is basically just knowing what is going to happen and agreeing to it, and verbally agreeing to it for the most part, saying.
Okay, and the question was?
The question is, do you think it's enough? Do you think this idea of no means no, or a woman has to, or anyone has to say yes before they engage in a sexual relationship? Like, do you think consent is enough? No.
I don't think so. I don't know.
I don't.
Like, what, they will say yes, yes, and then they will have...
Yeah. I mean, because of what we said about.
Can you maybe go a little bit deeper?
Yeah, of course. So the way that women are, this whole thing we said about agreeableness and.
Yes, that they will. I think women, they will agree to it.
Yeah.
And then they will regret it.
Yes.
Most likely.
Exactly.
I agree on that.
And it even kind of, the lines are blurry even within feminist spheres.
So okay, so back to this one. If it's consent enough, on. Like, women can agree on something, but like you said, she can regret it later. But, I mean, enough. At that point, yes, it is enough. She agreed to it, you know? Like, there is no way, like, you cannot undone things that you said.
Exactly, especially when what came along with the sexual liberation and the freedoms, there had to be some moral outline, moral border, a point where you say, this is what, you know, when everything goes, when any fetish is accepted, when anybody can have sex with anybody, you know, there has to be a line.
Yeah.
And that line became consent, basically. And that's why you kind of say, well, children can't consent because they're not old enough, they don't have fully formed brains, whatever. Children can't consent, a severely disabled person can't consent, whatever. These conversations, these topics come up. Also, when it comes to regular people, it sounds so horrible. Like, you and I.
The posh clubs.
Yeah. How, like, we also must consent. People, essentially, the moral principle, along with the sexual liberation and stuff, became consent.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the only moral guideline. You must obtain consent. But, you know, based on how women are, and not just that, but also, like, what is consent? Because now that this feminist narrative kind of says no means no, you need to obtain consent, but they can't even clearly define what it is.
Yeah.
Because when you're drunk, if you go out and you have 3 drinks with your friends and then you have sex with someone, you regret it the next day, did you consent? Because some people would say, yeah, you're drunk, you had 3 drinks, you didn't consent. But you even can out loud say yes, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
At that point, the other half should be smart enough to see if this other person is sober, or at this point, like, was his mind there to say yes.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
Know? If I see, like, even me, okay, let's say I see a totally drunk guy, I sleep with him, he says yes. Was it the smartest idea from me? No.
Yeah. And it's like, in a way, they didn't really obtain consent because maybe you were drunk, you weren't thinking straight, you weren't in the right mind.
But in the end, you should be responsible for your own actions.
Exactly.
You know? For me, like, even though I did stuff before, to be honest, I do not regret one.
Yeah.
Like, I do not regret anything.
Yeah.
There were mistakes that happened, yes. Were they hurtful? Yes.
Yeah.
But it is my fault.
And
it is my responsibility.
Unless you're blackout drunk, if you can walk, you can speak, you're just this kind of drunk, tipsy,
yeah.
whatever. You said yes. That's your responsibility. You weren't necessarily. You weren't raped.
Yeah.
If you say yes to a guy, you say I want to have sex with you, whatever, you're putting forward the cues.
Yeah.
You have to be responsible for yourself. If you know you're going to regret it the next day, it's not what you want.
Exactly.
Maybe, unfortunately, men do tend to be more assertive. Men do, if they want something, they're going to push for it.
True.
You have to, and that's when this idea of consent isn't enough, and this
Yeah.
attitude that we've created around sex, the fact that a woman has to speak up so much more because of what is expected in a sexual script or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If you're kissing a guy, he's going to expect that you're going to go to the next step. You go to the next step, he wants more, whatever. I just don't think this concept of consent is enough, because it doesn't even just come down to being drunk. It also comes down to this idea of like, a woman doesn't even have to say no. You have to infer from her behavior. Maybe she should be saying yes, but she's moving. She's saying yes, but she's moving away from you.
But she's moving, yeah.
And I actually, that's true. I agree with that. Like, if a woman is acting like that with you, and you're in a sexual situation with her, stop. Ask her. I can see maybe you're not comfortable. I don't mind if we don't do this right now.
I actually experienced this once. I was on a date with a guy. It was my first time seeing him. I knew him from before, from my past again. We went out. He was a bit more older than me. And we were sitting in a bar, and like, even though I was very uncomfortable with him, like at some, because he started to drink, and I was like, I just want one drink and I want to go home, because like it was a long day. We've been actually the whole day together, and at the beginning it was fine, because he wasn't touchy. He was just like speaking to me. But at the end of the night, he started to like put his hands like on me, sit beside me, telling me stuff, and this was our first date. Okay. Immediately talking about like that he has a fucking boat, that he wants to take me there, and that he has buildings. And I swear I was like going away from him, and I was like, he even asked me, I feel like you're uncomfortable with like me touching you, and I was like, yes, I am. And I didn't even, after ask for another drink, he asked for another one.
Really?
And he was getting like drunk. It was so embarrassing. And I told him, look, like, I want you to stop touching me. So first I was like, backing off.
Yeah.
But then I asked him, I was like, look, this is very uncomfortable for me. Don't do this. He didn't stop. Then I just grabbed myself and I left, right? At the end, like, of the night. Also kind of politely, I didn't want to make drama or anything. You never know. But that's a good example of when you are like going backwards. You're not giving him definitely the fucking green sign, like there's a red flag all over your face, and you just keep on going. Like,
exactly.
That's wrong.
And that's why this idea of consent that really popped up with the sexual revolution, whatever, when it became the only moral boundary, it is not good enough. We need something better. We need something more. But unfortunately, we're in this position. But for both sides, both because it takes responsibility away from the women sometimes, because the lines are so blurry of when are you able to consent or whatever. And also because men sometimes just, a no isn't good enough for them. They want what they want. I'm not saying that that's something we should accept. Obviously, we should fight against that. But consent just isn't enough.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we're in this position kind of societally where any other moral boundary that you create, it's suppressing somebody's sexual freedom. If you say, I would advise, you're less likely to be in this situation if you take a more, conservative view, and you don't have sex with someone until at least the third date or something. You don't go to a nightclub and try and find someone there to go home with. You're not going to be in that situation. You're not going to be in a situation that you're going to regret, an uncomfortable situation, a risky situation, if you are more careful. But if you say that to someone, if you say, you know what, I don't think you should have sex with someone you just met, I don't think you should have sex with someone if you don't know their last name.
Yeah.
Like, you're a prude. You're restricting women's sexual freedom. It's like,
True.
no, you just, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, but that's true. There should be lines, and each
Exactly.
person should be responsible for his own actions.
Yeah.
And I feel like many women, they are kind of using this, like exactly like you said. She gets tipsy, she said yes, she regrets it in the morning. And these days, it kind of also shifted to a way
Yeah.
where a girl will say, well, he sexually abused me.
Yeah.
No, he didn't. You said yes.
Yeah.
You have your own power to not get yourself in this position.
Exactly.
I'm talking in a position when you are not kidnapped, when you are not a kid, when you are a fucking grown up,
Yeah.
Like I'm talking when you have the power in your hands.
Yeah.
Yes, if a guy locks you in a home and then do stuff with you, that's a totally different thing.
Of course.
And I can talk about it by myself because I have experience in this thing. And when you say no, it means no.
Yeah.
And if you feel danger, I wouldn't go like towards the danger.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, of course, it puts you in a tough position because women are afraid to say no, not just because of our natural like disposition, not just because of the fact that we are less likely to say no to anything, but also because obviously there's the fear. Men are bigger, men are stronger.
It is much easier to men actually kill you or do something to you than a woman would do something to a man.
Exactly.
Like man can kill a woman with his bare hands.
Exactly.
I don't think I can kill a man.
No, exactly. So that's why consent is the only moral delineation. Is just, it's not enough. We need something better. We need to think about these things more. It's super nuanced. I'm not saying there's going to be a clear-cut answer. There isn't, and that's,
But in the end, women, they wanted to be so strong and independent and having their own ways. But suddenly when it comes to these things, they're like small babies.
Yeah.
They're like kids. They're like, oh, I didn't mean to. I didn't want to. It wasn't my fault. He was much stronger. And like I'm saying, this is coming from a girl who, we can talk about sexual abuse in different episode, but I experienced it, and I'm saying it kind of openly because I think, and I'm not ashamed for it, like, I'm saying it openly now for the first time, like, to everyone. This is my premiere. But it is something totally different when you are sexually abused accidentally. I was a kid, first of all, and from when you're in a bar and a guy touches you.
Yes.
And when you go home with someone and you say yes. Like, at that point, when I'm going with someone home, I'm putting myself in danger.
Exactly. And it's unfair to victims of sexual abuse, for someone who does feel like they've been wronged because of the fact that this consent line is so blurry. They feel like they've been wronged, but that they claim abuse, and I'm not trying to victim blame. It sounds horrible, but if you put yourself in that position,
maybe even like when you experience it, like maybe I'm talking from a perspective, like when you experience it, you are more careful with men.
Yeah.
For sure I am. I think you know it about me too. Like when I see stranger danger, it's really stranger danger for me.
Yeah.
But it's just like a healthy mind to think that you should protect yourself.
Exactly.
I will protect myself from girls, from a man, from
anyone.
Exactly. Like
100%. I think that's also the important thing. And what, I regret that I was afraid to say some of the things I said a few minutes ago, because personal responsibility is one of the most important things, and personal responsibility does not negate, take away, diminish, like, anything negative that happens to you. If something bad genuinely does happen to you, if you do truly feel violated, if something, you are entitled to that. And I'm not sitting here and victim blaming and saying you should have done better, you should have tried harder to protect yourself. But if you're not doing anything at all, if you're going out into the world and saying, you know what, like, everything is fine, I'm just going to go to these situations, put myself in this place, do this, whatever, and you're not putting any kind of wall up, any kind of protection, you're not taking any personal responsibility, what are you doing? What are you doing?
What are you doing?
I'm not saying that you deserve to have bad things happen to you, because nobody does, but can you really sit there and blame, I don't know, male nature for things that have happened to you?
Exactly. Like,
not
if a guy would, like, be naked in front of me and say yes,
Yeah.
then probably I'm not saying no, you
Yeah,
know? Like,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
if I would like him, of course, not anyone else.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I don't know. I just that's essentially it. I feel like we wrapped everything back
Yeah, I
up
think
together.
so. Exactly. Yeah.
I have no solution. I
Well,
don't know how to
I
improve these
think
things.
to this thing there is a
Yeah.
solution that people actually, well, it is hard to say,
Yeah.
but they should think for themselves.
Yes.
They should be maybe sometimes more smarter,
Mm-hmm.
not throw themselves around everyone. And
Yeah.
it's for girls or men, you know? Like
Yeah.
now you hear that men are being sexually abused also, girls also, you know, like
And also just maybe in general, this is not something that an individual can do, but on a societal level, I think we should we should stop trying to pretend that gender differences don't exist.
exactly.
Men and women are different,
Yeah.
and it's fantastic. It's amazing. It's
Yeah.
great. Neither is superior. We're just different. And I think that would also help with so many of these problems. It would take time. It's not going to be
It's
instant,
true.
but-
Everybody is trying to make it so equal, but in wrong ways.
Yeah.
It's shifting a totally different direction. And when there is something too much of, it's never good.
Yeah.
It can never be good.
Exactly.
There is no balance. And yeah, so I loved this talk.
Yeah, me
This time.
too.
It was really good. I'm glad we
Yes.
talked about something important. Maybe it can actually help someone,
Yeah,
you know?
I hope so.
There are many young girls or guys that are not that responsible these days. I'm sorry, but they are
It's
not.
true, yeah. Like, maybe something that's a little, you know, I kind of wanted to say it earlier.
Open-minded, like alert, you know, like
Yeah, it's better to be cautious, and I think the thing is, a lot of the tools that the sexual revolution provided us with, or that came along with it, like birth control, like abortion, it almost these things, just because you have access to them, it's not a free pass to be irresponsible. You should still protect, just because there is less risk of pregnancy, less risk of an STI or whatever if you're using a condom, things like that. You need to protect your mind and your spirit as well as your body.
True.
Especially for women. If this is not what you want, if this male-driven sexual society is not serving you, step back. Don't be part of it. Just because your friends are on Tinder going out one night stands, whatever, if it's not for you, it's not for you. And I would wager a bet that for most women, it's not for them.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm comfortable saying that because.
Yeah. Well, I think we are being honest.
Yeah.
And that's the important part about it. So I think we can end our episode here. This was actually great.
Yeah.
I love to talk with you always.
Yes.
And yeah, be ready for our next episode.
Yes, amazing.
Like we said, you have a chance to see our videos unfiltered here on Twitch. And then more filtered on Spotify. Well, slightly, just bit cut off. Here you can see all the technical issues.
Anyway.
Yeah, so actually this is it. Thank you for listening to our podcast.
Yes.
And hopefully see you soon, guys.
Yes, see you soon.